Hello, fabulous person. Beate Gillette here, the Growth Architect. Welcome back to the Business Growth Architect Show, where we bring you cutting-edge business strategies from some of the world's most successful entrepreneurs, business transformation experts, and visionaries who want to help you to scale your impact. Look for one tangible strategy that you can take back and implement right away. And now back to our guest. Welcome back, everyone. This is Beate Gillette, your host of the Business Growth Architect Show. Today, I am here with a friend and a mastermind buddy, believe it or not, and his name is Dustin Riechmann. Dustin, I'm so happy you're here.
Beate, super pleasure to be here. Can't wait to unpack some strategy with you today.
I love it. So, Dustin, for somebody who has never heard of you and all the things that you've done already, tell them, what do they need to know about you?
So I'm an engineer who helps married couples. I sell meat sticks and I do business coaching. It's kind of the long and short. So So my background, I had an engineering career, did engineering consulting for a long time, had a bunch of side hustles, including some digital information type online businesses. After I left engineering, I got into a business partnership with a gentleman. We sell craft meat sticks at a company called Fire Creek Snacks. So that's part of what I do today, is really focus on being the CMO of that company. And then the other half of what I do is business coaching at a company called Simple Success Coaching, which is more the emphasis of the mastermind that you and I are in together.
Yeah, and I know that everybody thought you were making a joke when you said I sell meat
Totally
sticks.
true.
He does sell meat sticks, and I hear they're really amazing. I mean, I've heard people rave over them. And for those of you who are not watching this on the video, but on the audio, Dustin, you're wearing a very specific t-shirt just for me today. It's a bright yellow t-shirt and it says
Stubborn German. It's a local brewery here. Has anyone heard you pronounce my last name? I have very German heritage, not as direct as you. But you were the only podcast host to ever say my name correctly without being prompted. So I appreciate that.
Yes. So, well, you can only imagine what people do with my name.
Oh, I bet.
That's a whole other story in itself. So let's dive into this. So obviously, as an engineer, a strategy is something that I assume is something that probably is very innate to you. So what is strategy in your world and how do you use it?
Absolutely, it is. I always tell people, going to engineering school, and I have a master's in civil engineering, and I taught at the university for a while too. That whole thing to me is just teaching you a process on how to think strategically through problems. So like, you encounter problems and then you back up and you see the end that you want to have in mind in the current situation, and you figure out the pieces in between. So I think of strategy as taking a step back, big picture, thinking about things using wisdom and using your experience, right? Rather than just jumping in and trying to be tactical and trying to just do things for action's sake. So to me, strategy is the ability to step back, see the big picture, and think about a step-by-step process to approach a problem.
I already have a trick question for you.
All
So
right.
what I found a lot, Dustin, and I think you're the perfect person to talk to about this, who go and say, well, it's the niche, it's the niche, it's the niche. But sometimes when you need a strategy, you actually need to go to 30,000 foot.
Mm-hmm.
So how do you tell somebody who says, what do you mean step back, big picture? Am I not supposed to be really good in a small thing? What do we tell them, Dustin?
So yes, I mean, you should be, you can specialize, right? But even within a specialty, you need to have a strategy. So I think where people, the default action for a lot of people is, hey, I need this result. What's like the tactic? What's the tactic? And so to me, that's the distinction here. There's a strategy, which is like the overarching big picture. And then there's the tactics, which are the little actions you're going to take. So a lot of times we'll jump in and we'll try a new tactic to solve a problem or to get a result in our business. But if you lose sight of the strategy, you could just be going down the complete wrong direction, because you're not stepping back enough to see how's that tactic fit into the larger goal or the larger outcome that we're trying to get. Does that help answer that?
Yeah, I think that the reason I wanted you to talk about this with me a little bit is because that is so misunderstood in my world. I think about the quote from Steve Jobs where he says most famously, he's most proud of the things he didn't do. And I believe that it goes into this idea of so many people don't understand on whether or not this thing, even though it might be lucrative today, but how does this thing fit into where I really want to go? And they keep adjusting the course. So
Yes.
you have done this for several businesses.
Mhm.
What's the difference between course correction and changing a strategy?
Yeah. So, I mean, the thing I encourage people to do, and we can talk about when they don't do this, right? And we have to course correct in the process. But what I always like to do for my own businesses or any of my coaching clients is to start with laying out a strategy, right? So we'll talk about things like what's a 10-year vision for your life, a 3-year vision is really where I like to live, personal and business life. It's like, what are your for you, what do you actually want from life, right? And so most people don't ever ask that question. They just think about like, do I do a Facebook ad today? You know, but like, no, what do you want like for your business? How does it serve you in a bigger way, in a longer term way? Then we can step back to a 1-year horizon and talk about goals, outcomes that we want to achieve towards that 3-year vision. And then the real key for me is we always develop a 90 days plan, a 90-day strategy, right? So what can we tangibly do now to really affect that 1-year outcome? So that's how I like to think about things, because then you're doing things intentionally. So whatever I'm doing this week fits in not only to my 90-day plan and is very measurable at that level, but it also feeds into those 1-year outcomes or goals that, you know, the revenue number or whatever we're really trying to hit with that. And it fits into my 3-year vision for my life and what I want this business to do in a big way. So that, to me, that's how you tie them together. Now, if you don't have that and you find yourself, you know, 2 years into your business and you're, as we were talking in our mastermind, it's 9 o'clock at night, your hair's on fire, you're completely stressed out. You've never set a 3-year vision to aim at, right? But now you realize you're off course from what you want. Then that's when you need to step back. And oftentimes you need someone to help you with that, a strategist like yourself, a coach, someone who can stand beside you and say, now look at what you've done. It's not good or bad, but this is where you are. Let's reassess. Okay. Like we won now we're going to set our new vision. And then how do we get off the path we're on, onto the path that we want to be? And, you know, obviously the specifics of that would depend on the specifics of the circumstances. But to me, it's always about getting back to a plan. Like no plan executes perfectly ever, but if you never have a plan to start with, you're just, it's like random action, right? Like you don't have a target, you'll miss it every time, is the old saying. So
Yeah, I love this part. I am also so happy that you say 90 days, because that's one of the strategies we recommend, to look at
great.
strategy as you need a strategy every 90 days.
Yep.
So if you are growing your business and you suck at lead generation, you should do a lead generation 90-day strategy. If you don't know how to convert, you need to do a 90-day, I got to get better at sales, conversion strategy. And a lot of the masterminds and the programs that you and I participate in and that you and I facilitate are for the same time frame, because we understand that it's not one stretch, it's a large strategy that's broken in smaller strategies that all tie back into that overarching strategy, that and these smaller strategies then have tactics of things that you actually need to be doing.
Yep.
So now that we successfully confused everybody with the strategy, what's your favorite strategy? Because I know that, and it was personally, which is why I wanted you on the show. I know you just launched a mastermind and you have this phenomenal idea on a strategy that I really want you to share with the audience. So what is that favorite, sexy, awesome, amazing strategy you're working on right now?
Thank you for the flattery, but yeah,
It
this
need it,
it's
right? He's blushing right now, everybody, by
I
the way.
actually am. But it's it's something that grew out of a lot of personal experience. I talked about I've been involved in many businesses and consulting, and this I didn't really name it and create, you know, the system around it and the framework to be able to teach other people until, you know, more recently. But it's, in hindsight, is something I've been doing my entire adult life, and it's this idea of what I call partnership marketing, and it is, and we'll talk about like the specific framework and what we work through, but like in a very broad sense, what is partnership marketing? In general, it is basically leveraging other people's audiences to showcase what you do, what you sell, you know, in front of your target audience. So in other words, it's like selling your shit to your target audience without paying for ads or anything else in the process. This came to me most directly in my e-commerce business, Fire Creek Snacks. COVID happened, marketing was messed up, brick and mortar stores were closed in the state that we're in. And I was like, I got to try something different. So I just reached out to kind of a warm connection, got on his podcast. We had a great conversation, and it shocked me. I gave a coupon code at the end. I was like, I sold some snack sticks, to a podcast, and it was very interesting. And then I started having these people reach out, and I've developed relationships. And I ultimately ended up just doing this on a regular cadence. And we have a 7-figure e-commerce business that doesn't use paid ads, which is very contrarian. That's not what people do in e-commerce typically. And we have paid ads now, but they're an amplifier to that base that we built through relationships and storytelling and being out talking to our target audience through podcasting. And then I've built my entire coaching business on the same strategy. And who I mostly work with now are more B2B service providers. So I'm happy to unpack that, but there's a specific a version of this for them that really, serves that type of audience. But the reason I said all that to start is this concept, this mindset, this approach can be applied to any business. It can work for local service businesses. It can work for e-commerce. It can work for any business. Can really use some version of partnership marketing in the sense that I just described it. And I've got a specific strategy for these, B2B service providers. So we can talk about that if you'd like.
Yeah. So what I love about that is, last year, it's very interesting that you say this, because last year that was how I started. When I heard about the concept of borrowing other people's audiences, and I thought it was like the best thing since sliced bread. I thought, I love talking. I love sharing information with other people. It's easier for me than writing, and it's faster.
Same.
It's a medium I personally like because I listen to podcasts, and you always have an idea. And I'm in LA, so we always stuck in traffic. So what else are you going to do other than listen to podcasts? And so, but what you are doing is a little bit different than just borrowing other people's audiences. You have an actual strategy, and correct me, it is kind of like how do I convert these people into client strategy? So dive into it. Which part of this should the audience know if they go, what can I use a podcast to convert people into buying something from me? How do we do that, Dustin? Tell us.
Absolutely. And so the old school way of thinking about this, the way I got into it was literally, I'm going to go talk into the ether. I'm going to talk to this audience, this invisible audience, and some portion of them is going to want to buy my stuff. And that's still true. And I've sold meat sticks that way and stuff, but the much more smart and effective strategy around this for most of your audience, who are people that, they sell services, they maybe are agencies, marketing agencies, they maybe are coaches or consultants, even authors who have a back end though, like who have an offer, a fairly high ticket offer. In that sense, and that's who I really, work with in my mastermind, it's much more targeted and strategic. So we no longer think about which podcast audience do I want to speak to? We think about which podcast host and which podcast former guest, I guess is a term for this, right? So I look at a show and say, would the host potentially want my services? Maybe, but there's a lot more previous guests, right? So if I can say, look, in the past year, this podcast has had 50 people on it, and I can see that like 10 of these people would be prime candidates for the service that I provide. So if I'm an SEO service, search engine optimization, maybe I'm looking for, are there thought leaders on here who have content, who talk about a specific specialty, and I can tell like they're not really doing great with SEO. And I say we're going to talk about how we outsource this and have someone else do most of this research and this work. But that's the lens I'm looking at podcasts through, is who can I have a warm relationship with as a result of being on this show? I think about it like I create a pond to fish in, right? So are there some fish from this podcast that I could go be in my sales pipeline and talk to them and potentially offer them what I do as a service because it's a great fit? If there is, then I want to go build that pond. And those are the shows I want to talk to. So that's the first and foremost, is like, that's why you're on the show. Now there will be residual things that happen. People in the audience will also like you, and you'll get, referral partners, people will hear you on there. That's all good, but I don't count on that. I count on the ROI from the ability to have potential clients in that direct line of the show. So that's what we teach people. We teach people how to do that, how to be a really good guest, how to have a really strong call to action, how to develop stories that are true, but are personal to you and emotional, to where people really tie in and they remember you and really appreciate what you do. And, how to really follow up with the host and develop a great relationship there. It's kind of like podcasting 101. Whether even if you didn't want to deploy my strategy, these are all things you should really be doing to be a good podcast guest. Kind of the second phase of this is offloading this, which I know is music to your ears, which is, basically we help you find, hire, and train a VA who does all the research part. So you give them like the screening criteria, you give them, either the software, the spreadsheets to fill out, but they're going out and figuring out where these prospects live on podcasts in podcast land. And then they are filtering through them and bringing them over into your world to be visible. And then the third phase of this, once you've got these visible prospects, is, sales. It's a sales pipeline. So we, leverage that relationship that we have. Hey, Beate, you were on Joe's show. Great episode. I was on there last year. He's a really great guy, isn't he? And like, you've got an immediate warm connection because and credibility, because you share, this authority of having been on the same show. So we just basically teach you how to leverage this work that you've done by being on the podcast to then talk to the appropriate prospects and close, sales for your agency or service or whatever you're providing. So yes, that's conversion, right? It's marketing, it's sales, but that middle piece is the part we often miss, and that's the conversion. And we're actually using the podcast as the mechanism for the conversion. And the beautiful thing is, once you've got this set up, you as the thought leader or the business owner just get to show up and tell your stories, right? Like you just said, like, I love being interviewed. It's fun. You and I have got to know each other in this medium. And so you're building wonderful relationships along the way, but it's ultimately a conversion mechanism. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And we'll be right back with a lot more from Dustin Riechmann about how to use podcasting as a conversion into clients. Thank you. Thank you for being here. Thank you for investing in yourself. Thank you for taking the time to learn the strategies that will help you to grow your authority and scale your impact. I am Beate Chalette. I am the Growth Architect. And just because you're here and you're listening to the show, I have two things that I would like to give you. Number one, for the subscribers to our podcast, we have exclusive bonus content that you can pick up at beatechalette.com/bonus. And my second gift to you is a piece from our 5-Star Success Blueprint, our method where we help business owners just like you, experts in their industry, to grow, build, and scale their business to multiple 6 figures, 7 figures, and beyond. And this particular piece is called the Airtight Avatar, and that is our action guide that will help you to identify who your ideal client is in only 15 minutes. You can pick it up at airtightavatar.com. Thank you so much for listening, and now let's get back to the show. And welcome back. Dustin and I were talking about podcasting and guesting on podcasts, but in a completely different way. So Dustin, you just shared with us that you have built this whole strategy, this 3-part strategy around how do I maximize my guesting opportunity on a podcast, not just for the audience, what most people think it is, but how to utilize this by targeting a particular type of host that, and then you using that into a strategy. So I know you're a family man, Dustin, and I know that you already have other businesses. So what's it about for you? Is it about that you just love building businesses? Do you want to make an impact? Do you want to feed the world? Why are you doing what you're doing? Why do you do so much?
That's a good question. My wife would ask the same thing, I think.
So I'll have her listen to this podcast.
I feel like it's 3 different reasons for the 3 different main businesses. So Engaged Marriage was my very first business. It's engagemarriage.com. It's started off as a blog, and it was very much an outreach from our marriage ministry. So my wife and I have been involved in marriage ministry for a long time, and I just wanted to bring that online. This is like 2009, kind of the heyday of blogging. It became a business. And as it became a business, we wrote a book and I was doing speaking. Then I really got pulled into digital marketing. So it's only through that seed of ministry that I got into digital marketing. Digital marketing became my ticket out of engineering because I was getting burnt out of my career. So that's why I got into consulting and helping people do marketing in their businesses. That's where I met my business partner for Fire Creek Snacks. And he said, hey, I've got this awesome brand. I'd like to bring it online. And I said, I'm sure I could figure it out. So I worked for him for free, and we launched on Shopify and have done really great things since then. So Engaged Marriage was kind of always exists because it's my wife and I's brand. Fire Creek is a sellable asset, right? Like I like it, it's fun, but we are building that with the vision to sell it and have buku bucks and have fun with the money. My passion and what I've really discovered in the past several years is this business coaching, this business strategy, hosting masterminds, things like that, where I get to impart this really bizarre breadth of knowledge and experience from my own businesses and all the clients I've worked with, private, both in engineering and in business and entrepreneurship. And I just get jazzed up for that. Like I get so much energy of pouring my experience into an entrepreneur and then watching how that affects them and their family. So ultimately, I do, like everyone, want more freedom and time, and that's what the money is about, and ministry, like directly be able to support things that we care about. But these are all different mechanisms, I guess, towards a common goal in the way that my mind thinks about these different businesses that I'm involved in.
Would it be fair to say that maybe the ministry that you've been involved, that is taking that sharing opportunity, because that's what ministry is really all about, right? Is
Yeah.
you figure something and you want to share it with the world. Would it be fair to say that that is almost like that's where you come from, that's where your heart is, and now you, every time you touch something, you go like, oh, I must share this with the world.
Yes, I think so. I sharing or service. Went through a mastermind with some people and tried to answer the question of what is your purpose, which, that's a loaded question. But the theme that came up for me repeatedly, and since I've dialed into it, continues to come up for me, is this idea of stewardship. So stewards, there's a good steward in a biblical sense, but the idea that those who are given opportunities and those who are given things, not just money, but, time, talent, treasure, like you should do really good things with that and multiply it and pour it out in abundance to other people. So yes, I feel very called to service. The application of the service can vary widely, right? Like it could be direct, like marriage ministry, it could be donating to a cause, or it could be helping people grow their business so that they can have a bigger impact. And that's the part, I'm middle-aged now. I've got my oldest child is 17. So we've got 3 kids. I've been married 20 years. So I'm entering that second half of life. And for me, it's less about the direct income and more about the impact. And so that's what it is. It's kind of bottling up all this stuff that I learn and then sharing it. Like you just said, I love to share it with other people, see how it works for other people, tweak the process, and that giving forward of something that I've benefited from, I think is where I get the most fulfillment, I guess.
Yeah, and the reason I talk about these questions on the show is because I want our audience to recognize that, yes, there is a part of where we need to master making money and income, and where it's about hustling and getting there. And when you first make money, yes, you will buy the toys because that's just the fun part. But I do believe that, as you said it, as we go further or grow further in life, that there often is a point where you see that other things are becoming important, right? The mindset part, the belief system, on whether that's God, spirit, the universe, whatever somebody is comfortable saying. But that connection to a larger purpose is almost critical to feeling successful at a certain part. And I knew you were a good partner to talk to about this, because that's where you come from, and that's what you truly believe in. So I do believe that it is important for us to always share that we are here to make money, we're here to be successful, but we're here to be connected, and we're here to help each other, and that there is enough for everybody. And then when we do find something that is powerful and it helps other people, it's also okay to charge money for it. It's also okay to charge a lot of money for it, because then they can take that and create their abundance in their own world. So anything do you want to add to that?
No, it's not a question I'm asked often, so I appreciate it. It's a little bit of a ramble for me, but it's kind of working through what was coming up for me. But I think you did a really good job summarizing that back. And for sure, yeah, the word ministry again is a loaded word because people think it has to be nonprofit or whatever. But I feel very, very opposite of that. I feel that charging something that's of great value, a price for that, not only rewards the person who's giving such great value, but it makes the person that's receiving it be invested in it. So when you give something away for free or it's really cheap, people just do not they cannot emotionally invest in it the same way they can as if they really had to sacrifice in some way and invest in themselves, by being in a program, a mastermind, whatever it is in someone's life. So no, I think you did a good job talking about that topic and the idea of impact and fulfillment, being kind of the bigger purpose for all these strategies that we talk about with our businesses.
Well, it's always connected. And I want to make sure that, on this particular podcast, even though it's all about strategy, that the listener is very clear that while it is a strategy, it's people who are running the strategy that have often a strategy for the greater good in mind. And I had a conversation with my brother last week where he is, an insurance salesman who wants to get out of it so bad and into coaching, into life coaching. And then he says to me, well, in that kind of business, the life coaching kind of business, is, well, you can't really sell and ask for money because that's like contradictory to the idea. And I'm like, what? What?
No. Well, I mean, so his idea is to like retire and then just do life coaching for free because that's the good thing to do.
I said that to him, and he says, well, we're in Germany and you are not allowed to advertise, these kinds of things. I mean, it's even stricter than it's here. And I said to him, yeah, but you can have people that you have helped talk about how amazing you are. And he says, I didn't know I can do that. So I want to make sure, and that's why I asked you the question, and that's why I wanted everybody to really take this away, that no matter where you are, no matter what kind of business you are in, and no matter how helpful it is, right? I think on the meat stick, it's like, okay, I'm hungry, you have food, that's a transaction. So I give you money, I take the meat stick, I eat it. So that's a transaction. But I have a problem, I come to you, you help me. That's not a transaction. So that's I'm asking you for help and now you're helping me, and that is all supposed to be free. But it is the same kind of energy in the transaction, in the same kind of value, sometimes even more valuable. If you help somebody with your ministry not to get divorced, you probably save them, what, $500,000 on average?
A lot of money that way. Yeah. And I should say too, this, it's not that there's not a role for charity. And, I do scholarships and I would do pro bono work at times. And like one of my favorite things to do is to work like in the high school level with entrepreneurship programs. And no one's paying me for that, right? Like if anything, I'm soliciting sponsors to help invest in the kids and make sure that they have a really good experience. So it's not, but it's very much not what your brother's attitude. It's not an either or, right? It could be an and. I need to make a really good living. I want to support my family. I want to have a legacy, and I want to be able to give to a lot of good causes. You can't do any of that if you're broke. Broke people have a really hard time changing the world. People that have money and abundance can do very good things in the world, including when it's appropriate, being charitable and giving people help that really need it without charging them or charging them at a reduced rate. But the really slippery slope there is if someone comes to me and they say, man, I really need help with my business, I can't pay you anything. I've done it in the past. I will beat myself up trying to help them. They will do nothing. They'll get no results because they're not invested in it, right? As much as they say they want the results, if they're not putting some skin in the game at some level, they're not going to get the results. And I've just been around the block enough times to see that. And that's why, that's why that approach doesn't work.
Yeah, I mean, and we hear this all the time, and I'm sure that everybody who's listening has heard this before. I don't have the money or I don't have the time. Well, you either pay in time or money. So if you don't put the money down, it's going to cost you time, and time oftentimes is much more valuable than money is, because it takes a long time to figure things out. Dustin, we've learned so much from you. Thank you so much for giving us all this information. So for somebody who now says, I wanted to learn how to convert my podcast guesting into hard dollars in the bank so I can make my impact, where do we send people? What do you have for us?
Come over to not the meat stick brand. You can go there and get meat sticks if you want, not the marriage brand, but
yes.
you can do all three. But if for the strategists in your audience, people want to grow their business, I'd love to talk to them. They come to simplesuccesscoaching.com. My email is Dustin, Dustin, at simplesuccesscoaching.com. So people can feel free to reach out. They can learn more about, how we work and what a mastermind is. And we do those on a limited basis, and we curate the members. So it's not as if anyone who wants to get in can get in, but if someone was really lit up with this idea and they really want an accelerated path to that, I mean, that's what I do. That's really what I'm passionate about. But if they're not quite there and they have other questions about partnerships or podcasting, I'm a big believer in being transparent and helping any way I can. So yeah, feel free to shoot me an email, simplesuccesscoaching.com. If you can spell my name, Dustin Riechmann on LinkedIn, I'm pretty active there as well.
Okay, wonderful. Well, thank you so much for being here. This was amazing. I appreciate you and I appreciate your time.
Just the same. Thanks so much for having me. It was a lot of fun.
Thank you so much. And this is it for today. This is Beate Gillette, the Growth Architect, the host of the Business Growth Architect Show. And that's it for us today. Thank you for listening and watching the Business Growth Architect Show. I enjoyed having you here. And for accountability, just take one of the strategies that you have heard, one thing that you can implement in your business immediately. Please leave comments. Don't forget to like and share this show. And if you have any questions about business, please put them in the comments. We are here for you. We're here to support you and help you to grow, build, and scale your own business. For more advice, please check out our website in the show notes below. Thank you again. This is Beate Gillette, the Growth Architect, and goodbye.